I was captured by his gaze. His strength left me nowhere to escape. But when I tried to resist, tried to break free from his control, he conquered me with a kiss, melting me completely in his arms. Chapter 3. For a small smile curved up my lips as I watched Alaricus, his brows furrowed, honey eyes crinkling in concentration, his tongue poking out the side of his mouth as he focused on his roses, cutting off the thorns carefully. His diligence was admirable. When he focused, it seemed the things around him all disappeared. But occasionally he would look up at me, throwing me a small smile. This would be much quicker if you'd just let me help. To my agent extraordinaire, Myelin Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Love, you tried before. You know how that ended, and trust me, Angel, I have no problem with delivering a similar consequence once more. He said, a slight smirk quicking up his plump red lips. My cheeks heated immediately, and I ducked my face, hoping he would. My cheeks had gotten. Apparently attempting to help with his roses wasn't one of my best ideas. I'd stood right behind him, bored of being stuck inside all day, chattering into his ear about letting me attend to the rose shrubs. But I hadn't reached for them, as of yet. What I did was when he'd exploded. As soon as my hand had come with a few inches to the roses, he'd stiffened, dropping the garden snip in his hand and whirling around to face me, leaving me stunned. I froze, looking up at him, as he tightly grabbed a hold of my waist, yanking me up and onto him so that I had no choice but to wrap myself around him unless I wanted to be dragged back. He held me tightly to him, my legs wrapped around his waist, arms around his neck as I clung to him, which he didn't seem to mind. He set me down on the table that sat behind us, refusing to allow me to squirm away, instead planting himself right between my legs and holding my waist tightly so that I couldn't move even an inch away. I could feel his stare burning into my face, but I refused to look up at him. His honey-gold eyes were far too intense for me to handle, but he wasn't having my shine away. I squirmed in his hole, hoping he'd let me go, but his arm wrapped around my waist as he tugged me firmly into his chest, using his other hand to tip my chin up to face him. You just can't stay away from danger, can you? He asked, his voice huskier than normal. I gulped, staring up into his eyes that were glinting much more gold than they'd been when I'd first found him outside. I should have just sat down. I was bored and it wasn't dangerous. I say, opening my mouth to speak again, but he interrupts before I can. It wasn't dangerous, he restated through clenched teeth, a humorous chuckle escaping him. But you were bored, why, baby? He asks, and I nod, slightly wide-eyed. I'm just gonna have to entertain you then, aren't I? He asked, his voice having dropped a bit more, his hold tightening on my waist. He leaned in, capturing my mouth with his before I had time to protest, his arm tight around me, hand wrapping in my unruly waves that ran down my back as he tried to pull me further into him. My eyes widened before falling close altogether as the sweet warmth of his mouth soaked into mine. I slowly sunk into him, my rigid body melting into the hard planes of his firm body until we were molded together. Alaricus moved his lips feverishly against mine as if trying to eternally join us together. The little breath I had in me left as he bit into my lower lip, tugging it, before nibbling on it softly, soothing it with his tongue immediately after, making me sigh, the parting in my lips allowing him to thrust his tongue into my mouth, tasting every crevice of my mouth. I wrapped my arms tightly around his shoulders, one hand playing with the tendrils at his nape. I tugged them, gently eliciting a low husky groan from him. I froze momentarily at the sound, my hand trailing away, but the growl that ripped out of his chest, letting me know he didn't like me stopping my movements, and I allowed my hand to trail back to his silky strands. He kissed me as if he would never get to kiss me again, with a fervor so apparent, a passion that burned within him and heated my own skin, a desire so desperate, as if it had only just gotten the chance to bubble to the surface. It seemed oxygen became a secondary necessity with each other's first. I licked over his plump lips gently, and he pressed himself further into me, his hands clenching. I pressed against his chest, but he seemed unwilling to let go, his lips ghosting upon mine for a moment longer before allowing me to catch my breath as he trailed kisses down my skin. Firm kisses pressed into my jaw before he trailed down the length of my throat, sucking on the skin of my collarbone, making it much harder for me to catch that breath. His tongue soothing over the skin immediately, his movements gentle but filled with a deep, near incomprehensible hunger. I love you. So much it consumes me, but I'd gladly be taken over it. My love for you is the best part of me, Angel. The right to love you is mine. Mine alone. And it's made me completely yours. He says softly, pressing a sweet kiss to my forehead. It's where I want you safe. I don't want you hurting yourself, Angel. You don't know how I'd feel if you even got a scratch on that soft skin. It would torment me eternally that I allowed the angel mistakenly sent to me get hurt. I don't want to ever see you hurt. I can't. Just stay safe, love. He asks, gazing at me with honey eyes framed within the dark lashes, and I nod, unable to say anything, but it's enough for him as he presses a kiss to the hand he holds within his grasp before turning back to his roses. I would probably never go near thorns again. A smirk apparent on his face, as if he knew what I was thinking of as he glances at me over his shoulder occasionally. My brows furrowed, a glare settling on my face. He was making fun of me. I would show him not to laugh at me. He would soon remember that. I got up to make my way towards him, my glare settled on the wide expanse of his back as I crept towards him. Although I needed a bit more height to truly intimidate. But I could use his against him. Actually climbing him sounded about perfect. I reached my hand out, intending to twirl him around away from the thorny bushes before climbing him. He whirls around, making me still, and before I could even blink he's lifted me up. Cradled me against him as he gazes down at me softly. If you wanted me to kiss you again, you could have just asked, love. Believe me when I say I'd never refuse. He says, and I nod at him sarcastically. Put me down, or so help me Alaricus, I will. I start, but am interrupted by an adorable little voice that is Alaricus whirling around me, still unfortunately cradled bridal style in his arms. Mari, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Nana's about to pop. Adrian says, his blue eyes wide. Chestnut curls absolutely disheveled. More so than normal. Adrain, what are you talking about? Mildly concerned. Victoria was about to pop. My eyes widen as I realize what he's talking about. The baby's coming. The baby's coming. I say to Alaricus, and his eyes widen, as he immediately puts me back down into the floor. Is your mother in the infirmary yet? Alaricus asks to Adrian's awfully, and he nods, his curls bouncing along with him, and I have a strong urge to squeeze his chubby little round cheeks. Let's go, Adrian says, grabbing onto my hand and pulling me behind him. I could carry both of you, and it might be faster. Alaricus whispers to me, touch either of us and I'll pop you. I whisper back sweetly, and he nods, swallowing thickly. Adrian's curls bounce as he walks in front of me. Somehow I hadn't intended myself up in the infirmary my whole time at the palace, and had close to no idea where it was located. You idiot. I hear a familiar feminine voice call. Victoria. We were here. Our hurried pace slows as her screaming reaches us. This probably wasn't going to be a very peaceful experience. Victoria was blessed with a very loud resonating voice. We walk into the room, Adrian in front of us. Almost as a shield. A mother wouldn't ever throw something at her own child. At least I hoped not. Nurses run around the room preparing for the final ordeal, attempting to stay out of Victoria's way as she walks slowly around the room, led by her frightened husband. She's dressed in a large pale blue hospital gown, loose around her except for on her bulging stomach, her dark curls from a large halo around her, while Frank's hair's a mess from either him or Victoria tugging on it in frustration. Frank looks at his eyes, holding absolute relief to see more people in the room. I let go of Adrian's little hand, making my way to Victoria, seeing Alaricus wrapping his arm around Adrian's little shoulders comfortingly. How's it going? I ask softly. It's pretty hard. But Victoria starts, but suddenly the breath is knocked out of her as she crouches slightly, trying to take deep breaths, but before I can even attempt to help, she's all right again. Well, her contractions were going smooth and she was handling them exceptionally well. Her face is absolutely flushed, eyes shining with exertion, and Frank looks absolutely enamored by his wife as she continues speaking. but the contractions are hitting pretty hard. This little one's excited to come out, she says, patting her stomach softly. It was admirable despite how much pain the baby would cause her. She loved it unconditionally. Already she loved her little one more than herself. A mother's love was incomparable to another's. Is the baby ready yet, Mama? Little Adrian asked, looking up at his mother with innocent big blue eyes. The excitement of finally seeing his little sibling brightening them up until it seemed the very stars resided in his eyes. Nearly ready, baby. Just a few more hours, his mom said, a small smile on her flushed face, as she raked her hands through his curls gently, his little head snuggling further into the touch of his mother. Should I go get the tongues? He asks, and I break out my adoring reverie, staring at him in bewilderment. For what exactly, darling? Victoria asks. To call the baby out. Enthusiasm, Adrian says excitedly, and Frank sputters, seemingly having choked on air. A slight chuckle escapes Alarikas. I though pride myself in having a bit more control and keeping in my giggle, though it escapes when I catch sight of the look of absolute bewilderment on Victoria's face. She looks slightly frightened. Adrian, the baby doesn't need to be pulled out by tongs. There are special procedures for such things, honey. But thanks for the offer. Victoria sputters out, and Adrian hums happily, snuggling into his mother. Adrian, why would you ask something like that? I ask, and Frank's eyes widen and he shakes his head at me frantically. Daddy told me the baby is going to be yanked out of Mama, and then I could see it. So I thought the tongues would help. Adrian replies, gazing up at me with big innocent eyes. You told him that the baby would be yanked out of me. Victoria hisses at Frank, and he shakes his head, before helplessly nodding, as if I'm some animal that the baby needs to be yanked out of. Victoria says through clenched teeth, and Frank's eyes widen as his head shaking gets more frantic. Well, this will definitely be the last baby that needs to be yanked out of me now, won't it? Victoria says, wobbling towards the little fridge to get herself a water bottle as Frank stares after her, looking devastated. He calls after her, and Adrian rests his little hand comfortingly on his father's, not entirely understanding exactly why his father was upset, but sensing his distress. When did your water break? I ask Victoria. A couple of hours. Probably 4, she says, sipping on her water, crouching slightly as another contraction hits her. They're getting quicker, she tells me, and I nod, offering my hand for her to hold, nearly regretting it as she almost crushed the bone in my hand with her manically strong grip. Honey, perhaps you should hold my hand. I wouldn't particularly want for you to break the hand of the sires made right before the birth of our child. Frank's, as in Victoria's, crunched her nose at him in distaste, tilting her chin away. Age would never be a factor in maturity. She'll be fine. Hopefully they'll have yanked the baby out of me before I could manage to break her hand, she says sarcastically, and Frank looks down at his hands. Are we not going to let that go? He asks quietly. Nope, Victoria says, her grip tightening immediately after on my hand as she inhales deeply. The whole afternoon passed by that way. It seemed as Victoria's contractions grew quicker in succession, so did her jibes at her crook, her husband. If it's a girl, we might name her. Victoria starts, stopping in the middle of her sentence, a low groan escaping her as she near well doubles over. Her hand is grabbed out of my hold by her frantic husband, who seemed to have cleared the distance between them of the whole room in mere seconds at seeing his wife's distress. Victoria says to her husband, and he scoops her up into his arms, careful not to jostle her as he lays her down onto the cot. He tries to make her as comfortable as possible as she clutches her stomach, her soft facial features contorting in agony. A gasp escapes me as a firm body pressed into me, a warm, strong arm wrapping around my waist as I'm yanked further into the person. Alarikas, I say softly. Are you all right? Massaging the hand that Victoria had held very softly in both of his arms lacing through my waist. I peek up at him over my shoulder, seeing his eyes glow in their ethereal good, as the more primal side of him ensures his mate's safety in the midst of the mayhem. I'm fine. Absolutely fine. I console him, softly reaching back to stroke the curve of his jaw tenderly, and he moves further into my touch. Enthusiasm, Adrian, baby, come here. As I see his teary eyes upon seeing his mom in distress, he rushes over to me, colliding into me, and snuggling his head into my stomach. I pull away my hand from Alaricus and wrap my arms around Adrian. "Mommy is going to be fine, baby. Let's go wait outside, all right?" I ask lightly, and he shakes his little head. "Baby, the doctors will be able to make sure your mama and the baby stay safe through this if we wait outside and give them space. Don't you want them to be safe?" I ask softly, and he nods. "By Mama, I'll be right outside." He calls out to his mom before allowing me to lead him outside. "I'm fine, baby," his mom calls out, cursing immediately after, and I quickly put my hands on Adrian's little ears, blocking out the noise of his mother's colorful vocabulary. I look behind us as I walk through the door upon realizing Alaricus wasn't behind us. I nudge Adrian forward, turning back to look at Alaricus, who speaks to the frantic couple. "Victoria, you have done this before. You are going to get through it again. If you need anything, let me know. I'm outside. I have my best doctors here for you. We are going to get that little one delivered safely," Alaricus says, patting Frank on the shoulder before making his way towards me. After smiling at Victoria upon hearing her gratitude for his kind words. "Thank you, sire," Frank calls after him before turning back to his wife. I can't help the little smile on my face as I stare at Alaricus. The man that everyone called a monster was here for his help, addressing them by name, comforting them. That was really nice. I say to him as we sit down on one of the couches outside the rooms. Little Adrian nestled safely between us. Alaricus playing with his curls, softly melting my heart just a little bit until it was mush. Apparently Adrian likes it quite a bit too, as in just a few minutes his adorable little snores ring out from little parted lips. Alaricus opens his mouth to speak, but before he can, a male nurse makes his way towards us. He bows down to Alaricus before asking permission to lay little Adrian on one of the cots in the empty room across from us. "Thank you," I call after him as he carries Adrian into the room, tucking him in. "It was nothing. They've both done a lot for me. They provide you with good companionship. It's the least I can do for them," Alaricus says, finally getting the chance to reply, and I smile at him, curling my feet up and onto the couch. Alaricus wraps his arm around my waist, pulling me to his side gently, and I snuggle into him. "Although I'm hoping with the baby here they'll take less of your time and I'll get you more to myself," Alaricus says, a mischievous glint in his eyes, and I let out a disgruntled humph, my head resting on his large shoulder, not exactly knowing how to reply. Not entirely sure I'd hate that all that much. Maybe with the more time it'll be us in that room soon. Alaricus adds nonchalantly, and my jaw drops as I attempt to understand if he'd actually said that or I was going insane. The second being preferable, but the mischief that glints in those honey eyes tells me I wasn't insane quite yet. If Adrian wasn't in the room across from us, and people all around us, you don't even want to know what I would do to you. I hiss at him. "Oh, but baby, I do. You could always whisper it to me, or at least promise me you will tell me later. Maybe even just do it to me," he says, and my eyes nearly pop out of my head as my neck stiffens. "I will hurt you." "What's pleasure without a little pain, baby?" he asks coyly, and I smile at him sweetly, seconds away from lunging at him and knocking that smirk off his perfectly chiseled dimple face. Even a strike would require a touch, and every touch leaves me in paradise. "That wouldn't be so bad of a punishment, my love," he says, and I frown at him in disdain. There was a woman giving birth just a few feet away from us, and this crazy wolf was flirting. "Believe me, not this one. This one will leave you bruised," I say smugly, not bothering to lift my head from his comfy shoulder. A gasp escapes me as I'm lifted and plopped into his lap, my legs laying across his lap, his arms supporting my back as he stares into my widened eyes. "A bruise would only be a reminder of your touch, and I doubt that my little angel could bruise me," he says, making my brows furrow. I was a gigantic, terrifying menace. I could really cause some damage. "Is that a challenge?" I growl out, all the practice as a child of imitating Nefossa, saying that coming in handy now. "Yes, kitten, it is," he says, blatantly insulting my menacing growl as he strokes the sides of my cheek gently with his knuckles, pushing the hair back from my face. "Well, you are going to regret that. When you sit in one of these rooms injured, thinking about how wrong it was of you to mess with me, you could still get out it. All you have to do is say Amara is a terrifying lion. Not a kitten. A lion." one who could very seriously and easily hurt me. Alaricus Knight, I say to him, raising my chin so that I appeared taller than him. Sadly, even though I sat in his lap, he seemed pretty large compared to me. A loud giggle sounds from before us and I whirl around, glaring at the nurses who stand there. What's funny? I saw them regularly around the castle, sweet women, but was giggling at my intimidation attempts. Drew valid. Nothing, miss. Winters, it's just if it really came down to it, you couldn't even cause a slight scratch and harm to Sire Knight. They say. I bite into my lip in disdain. A slight chuckle escapes Alaricus, vibrating through me as he holds me close to his chest. I see him wave the nurses away at the corner of my eye as he pulls me closer to him. He brushes away the hair that's fallen onto my face again. His eye is sobering as his gaze travels over my face. Adoringly, he always looked at me as if trying to memorize me, commit me to his memory. The back of his rough hand rubbing gently over the soft skin of my cheek. My angel, he mumbles under his breath ever so softly as he nuzzles my face. If it ever came down to it, you are the only one who can hurt me, baby girl. I drip my heart out and give it to you if you were to ask. Alaricus says, softly nudging my face softly with his nose. Well, I'm going to start working out. I don't look like much, but I'm strong, I swear. Soon everyone will see my giant muscles. I tell Alaricus and he nods in acceptance. They already do, Angel. They're just trying not to let you know they're deathly afraid of you and those muscles. Holding my upper arm between his pointer finger and thumb gingerly, I nod happily, laying against his chest, stiffening slightly as I realize everyone passing by could see it. You should put me down, this isn't exactly decent, I say, but Alaricus shakes his head, immediately yanking me closer. Please, he asks, looking at me through his thick lashes, his minty breath fanning gently over my face as those honey eyes burn into me. Well, maybe I'll later, I offer, struggling to speak clearly. It's not indecent, you are my mate. I can hold you if they have a problem, they can speak to me better, yet those muscles of yours. He says, and I nod in acceptance. At least he was acknowledging my strength. I look up at him to reply, my face dropping as I catch the amusement in his eyes. And his pursed lips. The conniving wolf was struggling not to laugh. I humph in distaste, about to address his amusement, but Frank suddenly comes tumbling out of the room, opening the door in which Victoria was. The once soundproof room is now ineffective as her yells make their way towards us. Where are you going? Victorious creatures. You told me to get lost. Frank replies glumly. Get back in here, you moron, before I come there and drag you myself. She yells and my eyes widen. Still want us to be the ones in there. I whisper to Alaricus once Frank is safely back in the room, after mouthing it was all going all right to us. It'd be an honor to be yelled at by you as you give birth to our child. Alaricus says, pressing a kiss to my forehead. And my throat gets a little dry at his words, a slight sting at the back of my eyes. But not yet, you aren't ready, my little angel is still so very young. I plan to marry you first if you let me. And only then would we start the family that's always wanted. Only if that's what my angel wants. Alaricus says, and my heart swells and a tear drops from my eyes. Angel, are you crying? Alaricus asks, his honey eyes going wide in panic. No, love, please don't cry. If you don't want that, it won't happen. I promise, only whatever you want will happen. I couldn't even fathom doing anything without your utmost wanton consent. Alaricus says, rubbing my back, panic clear in his voice. No, I don't know why I'm tearing up. I'm a little off today. It's not cause of what you said. Your words just get a bit much for me to bear at times. How could you feel for me with such depth? It's unfathomable. I'm no angel. I'm no queen, I'm simply a girl. I say softly. You're my angel. My queen, and always will be. It was unfathomable to me that I would have it anyone to call mine. Let alone you. An angel gifted to a beast. Surely by mistake. But the beast clung on, not giving the angel the freedom she craved. I'll never be what you deserve. You deserve far more, but I assure you no one will love you the way I do. A future with you is my fantasy, my deepest desire. You are my deepest desire, and always will be. Never doubt that, my love. Never doubt my passions for you, Amara. They belong solely to you, as do I. Alaricus says, making my heart beat so rapidly within my chest that I begin to fear it may just leap out of my chest for him to see. Alaricus loved me so that I made out his sanity but never his passions, the way a lover should. I couldn't possibly doubt your passions. I assure you I never will. My Alaricus, I say, softly grasping his face within my hands, pressing my lips to his gently. He moves his lips under mine ever so tenderly, his hand curling in my hair that falls freely down my back. I lick over his bottom lip gently, before pulling away from him, pecking his plump lips once more before resting against his chest as he wraps his arms tightly around me. I'll never give you the opportunity to doubt my passions. I couldn't possibly. You own my heart. Dominate my thought. You own my every heartbeat. You own me. I've been enslaved by you and for will be. He says, softly tilting my face up to press his lips to mine once again, biting into my lower lip softly before pulling away. His gaze is still on my lips as he swallows visibly, a hunger in his eyes that has my stomach clenching. I love it when you call me yours. Alaricus whispers into my ear, softly pressing a kiss to the side of my throat. Well, you are mine, I say, wrapping my arms around his neck, my cheeks coloring at my words, and I hope he doesn't notice my breath hitch at the prospect. Indeed, angel, all yours as you are all mine. How's it going in there? I ask Alaricus, knowing the soundproof hearing couldn't keep him out if he concentrated. It's going quite well. Victoria has an exceptionally high pain tolerance. She's handling it all very bravely. She also has a very rich vocabulary and imaginative mind. She just called Frank a man who has intercourse with a pickle. Not exactly that politely, though. Alaricus says nonchalantly as my brows furrow slightly. The baby's head is showing. Alaricus tells me, his tongue poking out in concentration as he focuses, attempting to listen to the conversation in the room meant to soundproof rooms for wolves. I sigh, incontinent, staring at him, his red tongue poking out of the plump lips. My adorable little wolf. Well, perhaps not little. I was so glad the delivery was going through smoothly. Victoria was such a strong woman. Thankfully, Adrian had been up all night last night in excitement, as today was the day the doctors had predicted the baby would arrive. So now he slept peacefully. The little monkey was very protective of his mother and couldn't bear being away for too long. A definite mama's boy. He would have been worried all this time. It's better for him to sleep through this. We wait in silence. I play with Alaricus, fingers as he rubs my back to soothe my jittery nerves. The kind male nurse brings us both some coffee and sandwiches to munch on as we wait. But due to my nerves, I eat very little despite Alaricus' incessant begging. The door bursts open suddenly and I jump out of Alaricus' lap, startling him as I run to Frank. It's a baby girl. Frank says quietly, tears running down his face. A beaming glow so beautiful on his face that it brings tears to my own eyes. Congratulations, Frank. I mumble softly, patting his shoulder softly before walking into the room, hearing Alaricus say the same behind me to Frank. Victoria lays on the bed looking absolutely exhausted, but a glowing smile on her flushed face as she holds her tiny baby close to her chest. You're so beautiful, Victoria mumbles softly to her baby. Oh, little Evangeline. Victoria says, a tear leaking out of her eye as she looks up at her husband, who goes to stand beside his wife, softly touching the little fragile hand of his newly born daughter. She looks just like her mommy. You're just as beautiful as your mommy. Frank coos to his wife and daughter as I step back, feeling as if I'm intruding. Come, Victoria says to us softly, her voice cracking very slightly in exhaustion. As we stop beside Victoria, the face of the sweet little angel finally becomes visible to us. She lays asleep comfortably in the safe, loving hold of her mother's arms. Her face so adorably pink. Dark lashes lay against her soft chubby cheeks. Little pink lips parted as she breathed, her little nose crinkling every so often. She shuffles slightly in her mom's arms, letting out an adorable little noise that has us all lay wing at her. She's a little angel, I say softly to Victoria, who nods gently, not taking her eyes off her baby. She really is. She's my little angel. Our little angel. Victoria says, handing the little bundle of joy to her husband. Somebody wake up Adrian, he'll want to see his little sister. Frank says, and a nurse assures him she will bring him in. The baby opens her eyes, looking up at all of us with bright, shiny but sleepy eyes. a yawn escaping her little lips that part, forming a perfect circle that melts my heart. A sleepy Adrian is led into the room by the nurse. His lidded blue eyes suddenly open wide as he catches sight of the baby in his father's arms. He rushes over to Frank, but Alricus grabs him before he can go tumbling into his father. Frank carefully sits down into a chair, making sure to not jostle little Evangeline. Adrian approaches his little sister softly, his lips parting as he gets close enough to catch sight of her. A soft look comes into his eyes that has me biting into my lip to keep from a wing. He looks so peaceful, staring at his little sister, a brotherly love immediately filling his big blue eyes as he gazes down at the little one that stares back at him curiously. She reaches up towards him with a pudgy little hand, and Adrian bends forward to let her touch him, a smile coming onto his face as her tiny hand splays out onto his chubby cheek. "I'm going to keep you safe forever," Adrian says. As my heart swells, Adrian would be the best older brother in the whole world, and quite protective too. Between having Frank as a father and Adrian as a brother, little Evangeline wasn't going to date until she was old enough to purchase a senior's coffee without being asked for identification. With how absolutely precious and stunningly beautiful she was, a lot of boys were going to be hurt by her overprotective brother. Her little hand reaches further up, wrapping her chubby little fingers around one of Adrian's chestnut curls. She yanks, making his eyes widen, but the smile only gets wider. Victoria watches happily from the bed, exchanging smiles with her husband, both thrilled at the obvious bond that had already formed between the siblings. They were a beautiful family. Little Evangeline had us all wrapped around those tiny pink fingers. With just a glance she'd won us over. Chapter 35, Morning Angel. A deep velvety voice said from above me, making me groan quietly as I snuggled into my warm pillow. The pillow was firmer than what I was used to, but I did never like super soft bedding. A large warm hand stroked over the curve of my back softly, nails scraping very gently over my thin pajama shirt-clad skin, that had raised ever so slightly as I cuddled with the fantastic pillow. I was pulled closer to the pillow, my body completely pressed against it. I opened my eyes slowly, yawning as I stretched, my mouth snapping closed as my gaze met with intense honey eyes. "Had a nice sleep, baby?" Alaric asked aftly, as I stared at him wide-eyed. So that was why the pillow seemed so great. It was actually a very tall, broad-muscled, powerful werewolf with honey-colored eyes. Didn't we agree on sleeping in our own rooms for the night? Propping myself up on my elbow, my cheeks coloring as I realized Alaricus wasn't wearing a shirt. His bare muscled chest on display, tight abdominal muscles, where I had accidentally rested my hand as I slept. I pulled my hand away quickly, my cheeks reddening further if possible. "I missed you," Alaricus says softly, wrapping his arms around me and dragging me back to him, so that my entire body is draped over his once again, muttering something about his favorite blanket. And we didn't agree. I was very deceptively convinced. Plus, I did stay in my own bed during the night. I only snuck in after sunrise, he says softly, nuzzling his head into the crook of my neck, his warm breath caressing my skin. I glare at his silky dark hair-covered head, attempting to stay mad at him. "I will put you out in the shed, Alaricus. You cheated." And a small whimper sounds from him as he snuggles closer into me, making my heart clench. "I'm so sorry, I was only joking. I promise I would never do that," I say quickly, and he raised his head, looking at me with his plump red lips jutted out in a pout. "Do you want to make it up to me?" he asks softly, his eyes widening to appear more innocent, and I nod frantically, making a smirk grow onto his face that makes me regret my actions. He flips us around so that he lays atop me, his body laying on me just enough to pin me down, while he supports most of his weight on his arms. His honey eyes glint with gold as they flicker from my eyes to my parted lips as he leans down to me slowly. Enveloping me in his arms, he crashes his lips to mine, effectively stealing my breath away. His lips move softly against mine, and cupping my jaw, gently tilting my face up to him. Plump red lips so soft and warm against my own. He nudges his nose against mine as he urges me to kiss him back, effectively breaking me out of my stupor and into his strong, warm hold, my lips moving gently against his, completely on our own, I didn't seem to be controlling my actions any longer. My hands go up to his back, my fingers digging into his soft, smooth skin that lays taut against the hard muscles of his back. One of my hands traveling further up to tangle in the dark, silky strands of his hair. He nips gently at my lip, making me tug at his hair, eliciting a growled moan from him as he pulls away from my lips, trading kisses down my jaw to the soft skin of my throat. He bites very gently against the skin, eliciting a gasp from me. He sucks the skin that attaches my collarbone to my throat seeming to burn from the ghosted presence of his previously placed kisses. His tongue darting out to tenderly lick at the skin. A soft moan escaping my parted lips that makes him go absolutely before a growl rips from his chest, and he begins to suck my skin with a passion so feral it erases the very thought of oxygen from my mind. He pulls away from my skin, placing gentle kisses around the area that suffered from his pleasurable onslaught before he raises himself back to his arms, allowing himself to only gently lay against me once more. "You don't know what you do to me, Angel," he says, his velvety voice much deeper, closer to a growl as he speaks between deep breaths. His chest rising and falling deeply, he cuddles himself into me, wrapping his arms around my waist and nuzzling his face into the crook of my neck, inhaling my scent deeply. We should get up." Trying to sound calm and collected while I feel anything but. "Or we could stay here all day," he replies, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. "What about breakfast?" "I'm a little hungry," I say softly. "I'm ravenous," he tells me, lifting his head to look at me, his eyes glinting with gold, letting me know we both weren't speaking about the same thing. For pancakes," I mumbled weakly, my voice cracking slightly, and he shakes his head slowly, deliberately allowing his eyes to rake over my pajama-clad form. He whispers, his voice much huskier than usual, making me swallow thickly as I keep my eyes on his. "Oh," I answered awkwardly, not knowing what else to say. "Oh," he repeats with a grin, wrapping his arms around my waist and crossing them so I'm pressed very tightly to him, as he presses kisses all over my face. "My sweet little angel," he mumbles against my cheek as loud giggles escape me. He chuckles along with me, holding me close to him, as he grins down at me, watching me with admiration as I laugh loudly in his arms. "I'm so awkward, why do you put up with me?" I ask sheepishly as our laughs die down. "You're my angel. Your innocence is endearing to me. I don't think you're awkward. You've been put through so much so young, and yet you are so very strong. You've handled it all with the grace of a queen." "My queen," he says gently, moving the strands that had fallen into my face gently away. "It was one of the first things I noticed about you. How innocent you were. Those chocolate eyes shine with innocent, this angelic purity that attracts the darkest of things, unfortunately including me. There's so much good about you, so much good in you. Your light, it forces the darkness to bow to it. That's part of why I'm so in love with you. And just a part. There's so many other things. The way your eyes light up when you laugh, that mischief that comes alive in them, that adorable childishness, how much you care about others, how you make faces while you read, and mumble to the characters as if they're right there with you, blushing when you realize somebody is watching. The way you make me feel, I've never felt before. I didn't know it was possible to feel this way. I'm in love with you, so very deeply. It consumes me, but I'd gladly be consumed by the sweet fire that you ignite within me." And presses his lips gently to mine, leaving my lips with a kiss so chaste, so pure it leaves my heart pounding. There wasn't anything physical about the kiss. It was only emotions. The deep emotion a man held for a woman. The emotion of a man in love. A man who wanted nothing from a woman besides her heart, besides her love. It brought tears to my eyes. "You make me feel things I've never felt before. Things I hadn't even considered. I'm sorry for hurting you. I shouldn't have acted the way I did. Everything changed so quickly. I had no adjustment time. No time to think anything through. I had these things planned, but life doesn't go according to your plan. You have nothing to apologize for. I shouldn't be given a chance. I'm not deserving, but you gave me one anyway, and for that I'll forever be grateful. But tell me about your plans. I know 'cause of me some things won't be safe for you, but I just want to know. I want to know everything about you. His large thumb rubbing ever so gently against the soft skin of my cheek as he speaks. Well, it wasn't anything extravagant, but I planned to attend university near the Freelands. Get to medical school. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I hope to practice in the Freelands. I say, biting my lip as I look at him. Anything else? He asks, and I stare at him quietly. How was I to tell him that I planned to fall in love with a human and settle down in the Freelands? In hopes my parents would one day join us. You wanted to fall in love with a human, I assume, he says quietly, and I nod my head, choosing to stay quiet. His face falls, honey eyes clouding slightly as his tranquil happiness is lost somewhere within them. But I wanted to see it again. I wanted him to be happy. I wanted to hear him laugh. The way he laughed, without any inhibitions, any limitations. He didn't seem like the most powerful alpha, he just looked like a man. A man with the most beautiful honey eyes that crinkled in delight. A man with dimples that dug deep into the tan smooth skin of his cheeks. A man without any demons, anything to cloud his bright eyes with sorrow. When he smiled at me, a man I could so easily fall in love with. A man I could love without any limitations, anything holding me back. Yes, that was the plan, but with you I found something far better than I could have imagined. You love me more than I could have wanted from a man. Truthfully, I thought I was too boring for somebody to love. I've always been a little worried nobody will love me. I'm not the type man I usually interested in. I'm nothing like my mom or my friends. They are so lively, so bright. They light up rooms with their presence. They are the life of the party. I'll always be too shy. Hell, I don't even like parties. I don't even know how you can love me. I spend half my time in the library, mumbling to myself while reading. I just don't get it. But that doesn't matter. You love me with all your heart. With this uncontrollable passion, I don't know if I could live without it anymore. I've begun to care for you so much. I've never been in love. I've never had a relationship with a man. And I'm glad. I want you to be all my firsts. Because I know nothing. And no one else could possibly compare to you. It was so difficult to put what I felt into words. I didn't know how. What I want to say, I guess, is that you're not some downgrade or a disappointment. I'm lucky to have you in my life. And I see that now. I say softly. And he gives me a small smile, but it doesn't seem to really reach his eyes. As much as he seems to appreciate my words, the gleam hasn't returned. He still feels guilty. I wouldn't be very good at this, but I had to try. I push my hands against his chest, wrapping my legs around his waist. In attempts to flip him, but the large alpha werewolf only stares at me in confusion, probably wondering as to what I was doing. I grab onto his shoulders in attempts to flip him, and he bites his lower lip, finally understanding what I want, and allows me to push him so that I lay atop him. He gazes up at me from under him, his intense honey gaze unnerving me. I lean down, slowly pressing my lips to his. I move my lips gently against his, thankful when he begins to move his too. Slowly at first. He seemed to simply relish the contact. I pull away from his lips, pressing a kiss to his cheek, where the deep dimple always pops up. Smile. I say, kissing it again, and he laughs in bewilderment at my actions. And I get my wish. The dimple pops out again. I press kisses all over the smooth tan skin of his face. The slight 5 o'clock shadow on his jaw tickling my lips, but I didn't mind. A chuckle escapes him that makes me giggle too. And I continue to place kisses all over his face, looking up into his eyes, seeing them glow in delight at my actions. He juts his lips out, looking at me pointedly, and I giggle, pressing my lips to his. He wraps his arms around me tightly as his tongue licks over my lips ever so softly. I pull away from his lips, kissing slowly down the smooth tan skin of his throat, and a moan escapes his lips that has me swallowing thickly as I continue down my path. I lick over his collarbone, gently eliciting a growled moan from him. That was perhaps my new favorite sound. I trail kisses down to the top of his chest, before resting my face on his chest in content. I love you, my angel, so much, he says softly, hugging me tightly to his chest. I bite my lip. A part of me wanted to say it back, a type of gut feeling, an urge, but I kept my mouth shut. I wouldn't tell there was nothing to hold me back. Love meant far too much for me, and I knew it meant so much for Alaricus as well. Breakfast? I ask softly after a moment, and he nods at me with a grin. Tightening his hold on me, he rolls us safely off of the bed. He twists me around in his hold so that one of his arms is around my waist while one under my knees, carrying me out of my room towards the kitchen. "Waffles sound good, baby?" he asks me, looking down at me as he walks down the stairs, and I reply with a quick yes, as I tighten my hold around his neck. It always frightened me when he carried me down the stairs. Although a part of me knew he'd never let me fall, he tightens his hold on me, pulling me closer up to his chest. "You're safe with me. I promise, Amara," he whispers softly into my ear, pressing a kiss to it. He walks us into the kitchen, depositing me safely onto the counter where he planned to cook. In our time together, Alaricus had somehow come to know all my likes and dislikes, and he spoiled me, indulging me in my every wish. He grabbed the jar of Nutella out of its cupboard, grabbing a spoon as well. He took the lid off, easily handing me both. He put his cheek before me, waiting expectantly. Giggling, I pressed a kiss to his smooth cheek, watching the dimple pop up as he smiled. I spoon Nutella out of the jar happily, quite possibly making myself diabetic as I happily eat spoon after spoon. I concentrate on my Nutella and near forgetting Alaricus is still in the kitchen as I peer into the jar, ensuring I've got a lot of my Nutella left. A gasp escapes me as two large warm hands wrap around my waist. I look up into honey eyes. My own widened. He leans forward until the side of his face touches mine, and I gulp my eyes wide as I stare over his broad shoulder. His warm tongue licks gently over the corner of my mouth, making my cheeks color. As I struggle to control my breathing, controlling my heartbeat not even in question, I had no say over my heart when it came to Alaricus. It always misbehaved. "You had some Nutella there," he whispers softly, and I nod my head mindlessly. "Do you want to go freshen up while I prepare breakfast?" Alaricus asks, gazing at me gently as he pulls away slightly, and I nod once again, still dumbfounded by his actions. "I see why you like Nutella so much. It is absolutely delicious, although I prefer this method over your spooning," he adds, and I turn betrayed, avoiding eye contact as I run out of the kitchen, rushing back up to my room. I close the door softly behind me, leaning against it to catch my breath. Thank God I had stopped there with the Nutella, or I'd be on the floor by now. I quickly grabbed a change of clothes and my towel, making my way into the washroom. I brushed my teeth, trying to be quick but thorough, before I stripped out of my fuzzy pajamas, shivering as I climbed into the shower, the hot water cascading down onto my cold skin, relaxing my tense muscles. Massaging the shampoo into my hair, I inhaled deeply. I was slightly guilty of not caring about the properties of the shampoo, but only the scent. I rubbed in some conditioner into my hair, washing my body before I rinsed both off, scrubbing my face before washing that too. Getting out eye towel, dried my hair quickly, yanking out the tangles with a brush before quickly drying them to rid myself of the damp feeling. I looked at the clothes I picked out. Not in the mood to wear a sweater and jeans today. I put them back in the closet, yanking out a grey long sleeve with a white collar poking out, hoping it would cover the mark Alaricus had left on the pale skin of my collarbone. The dress was made of a knitted material, along with slightly sheer black leggings. I put them on quickly, rushing back downstairs to the kitchen in hopes the waffles hadn't gotten cold. Alaricus turned around as I made my way to him, his eyes raking over me appreciatively, making my cheeks redden. "You look beautiful," he says, pressing a kiss to my cheek, and leading me to the kitchen table. He pulls out a chair for me, allowing me to sit before tucking me in. He grabs our waffles from the counter, setting the large plate laden with steaming gigantic waffles right in front of me, and his own across from me. My mouth begins to water at the delicious scent of the freshly made waffles, and for once I think I may be able to eat the gigantic portions Alaricus always gives me, as if I wasn't unhealthy enough without eating more than what was right for the average human sumo wrestler. I grab the syrup off the table, covering my waffles in syrup until it's dripping off the edges. I sprinkle some powdered sugar on top before diving in with my knife and fork, I'd never quite understood why people used the term orgasmic when it came to food, but now I most definitely did. There was simply no way to describe them. Alaricus was the best waffle maker in the whole universe. Even if there were more life forms out there, I'm sure no one made waffles like this. So very soft. But the edges and ridges pleasantly crispy in a very subtle way though. If the whole most powerful alpha wolf of the wolf of the world thing wasn't working for him, he should definitely consider opening a waffle house. Do you like them? Alaricus asked me, and I nodded wide-eyed, making him chuckle. They're so good I could kiss you right now. Well, it would be a shame to pass up on an offer like that, Alaricus says, a smirk tilting up his plump red lips as he leans across the table, his hand tangling into my hair as he presses his plump lips to mine, moving them gently against mine in an innocent kiss. Holding me to him. You taste good mixed with powdered sugar, although you naturally are definitely my favorite, he says as he pulls away from me, licking his lips, as if tasting me on them again, and I flush red but continue to eat my waffles. How is baby Evangeline? I haven't gotten the chance to go see her in a while. Alaricus asks. She's a little angel, stunning just like her mother, and just has a very sweet temperament. She really doesn't cry much. She smiles a lot, and it's the most adorable thing. It's unbelievable how warm she is. It's like hugging a tiny soft little heater to your chest. Adrian, of course, is already insanely protective of his little sister, always hovering over her. The poor little monkkin looks like he's going to cry every time she does. They make such an adorable family. Missing little Evangeline. I tried to help out, but Frank had taken some time off. It was better to let them, though some time alone with their newborn baby. They were both such great parents they barely even needed any help. Your love for children is absolutely endearing, he says, resting his hand on mine from across the table. I'll do the dishes. No, I have a surprise for you. Come on, love, I'll have somebody else do them, he says, grabbing my hand and leading me out of the kitchen. I follow after him and he leads us to one of the family rooms. Standing near the entrance, he gestures for me to go in before him. I walk in, spotting a man sitting on one of the couches, wearing glasses, a pleated sweater and dark jeans. The man seemed to be in his early to late 20s, with caramel hair that it seemed he'd wrecked out of nerves with green-colored eyes. Cyanide. Mrs. Knight, he says, bowing, and my eyes widen at his words, but his eyes are glued on his feet. He thought I was married. I was barely legal to be married. Amara, this is your new tutor. He's a very experienced professor and has worked at a number of influential institutions, and is a qualified psychiatrist. Alaricus says, resting his hand at the small of my back. My heart rate picks up. I was going to study psychology, something I always wished to do, and to be taught by a psychiatrist themselves would be more than I'd ever imagined. My name is Lucas Lockhart. Mrs. Knight, he says, refusing to look away from his shoes. And if it wasn't my eyes, then he was trembling ever so slightly. Winter's Mr. Lockhart, and it's very nice to meet you, I say softly in hopes of comforting him. He looks up surprised, his eyes flashing to meet mine before dropping again. I turn to Alaricus, throwing my arms around his neck. Thank you, I whisper into his ear, pressing a kiss to the smooth skin of his cheek. Alaricus wraps his arms tightly around my waist before I can pull away. Are you happy, my love? And I nod into his shoulder, making him chuckle softly. He's completely terrified. Alaricus, maybe you shouldn't sit in. I don't think he'll stop trembling, I whisper as quietly as possible, praying that the poor man wouldn't hear. Alaricus pulls away, shaking his head, but I stare at him pleadingly until he gives in. Turning towards my new tutor. I'm going to go attend to something, but I will be very close by here, he says threateningly, and I glare at him. But he ignores it. Pressing a kiss to my forehead, Alaricus leaves me and my new professor alone. So where do we start? I say, slowly turning back to Mr. Lockhart. Well, I brought some books, and I'll just need you to fill out some questions I've prepared to see how extensive your knowledge is in the subject, he says, nervously pushing his glasses back. Perfect, I say softly in hopes of keeping him at ease, and he hands the papers to me with shaky hands. I sit down on the couch a seat away from him, as it was the only couch that was close to the table that sat in the middle. I jump slightly as Mr. Lockhart flies over to the next couch, as if I pinched him. "Hey, are you all right?" "Yes," he blurts out, his voice nearly a yell. "I mean, yes, I'm fine, Miss Winters," he says, blushing, his voice much softer now. "Look, if you're going to tutor me, you really can't be afraid of me. I swear I'm just like any other student," I say, looking him straight in the eyes until he finally looks up to make contact with my gaze, just so that he'd be able to see I was telling the truth. "I'll have Alaricus sit out of our sessions if he scares you. He's really nice, though," I say, and the man chokes as I say Alaricus' name, trying to hold his cough in as I speak, looking alarmingly as if he may combust. "I'll get you some water," I say, shooting out of my seat, and rushing to the kitchen, hearing him cough incessantly from behind me. It would take him a while to get used to all of this. I fill a glass up with water from the fridge before getting back to Mr. Lockhart quickly. "Here you go," I say, offering him the glass, and he grabs it, drinking half, seeming to calm down a bit, and I go to step over his feet to get back to my spot on the couch, but it seems to be at the same time he leaned forward to put the glass on the table. The glass knocks into my leg, the water soaking the bottom part of my dress and my leggings on one side, as I'm knocked onto the corner of the other couch. I right myself, and Mr. Lockhart gets up from his spot on the couch, crouching near me. He grabs some of the papers, rubbing them over my dress and leg, trying to dry them, his eyes widened as he mumbles to himself incoherently. I was far more worried about my clothes to collapse into than my dress. "Get away from her." A deep husky growl comes from the entrance, and I look up, my eyes not even able to register the movement of the speaker. Mr. Lockhart is whipped off of me and slammed roughly against a wall. Alaricus pins him to the wall, pressing his large forearm to the poor struggling man's throat. A startled scream escapes me as another feral growl rips from Alaricus' chest, making his head whip over to face me. "Let go of him," I say, getting up to go towards them, but the look in Alaricus' nearly completely golden eyes frightens me. Something so feral, and so very deadly, so unlike the Alaricus I knew. This urge to kill, to hurt, to maim, lightens his golden eyes up in the most primal of ways, a dangerous passion, and intimidating possessiveness, reminding me so of the predator that I'd always believed this other inhabiting species was. My breath hitches in my chest as Alaricus turns back to Mr. Lockhart, moving his forearm down slightly as he swings his fist into the man's face, a sickening crunch resonating in the room. No matter how animalistic Alaricus was acting, a part of me knew he'd never hurt me. He wasn't capable of hurting me, but he was very much capable of not only hurting Mr. Lockhart but possibly killing him. I walk towards him, slowly resting my hand tentatively on Alaricus' shoulder, which tenses immediately under my touch, and he whirls to face me, keeping the man pinned as he stares at me. My insides quake in fear as I take a small step back, so only my fingertips brush against him. A cruel need to possess takes over Alaricus' eyes, and he wraps his arm around my waist, yanking me into him, dragging his nose softly from the length of my cheekbone to my jaw softly, as I tremble in his hold. "To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm," he growls out quietly, and I swallow thickly. "To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I whisper back hoarsely, maintaining eye contact despite how much the look in his eyes frightened me. "She's mine," he growls menacingly at the man, and he nods frantically. "I'm so sorry, Alpha King, I know she is yours. I was just wiping the water." The man belches out, but I ignore his words. "Don't touch her." Alaricus gets out through clenched teeth, and the man responds with a barely gotten out yes. He was losing air. Hesitantly I wrap my arms around Alaricus, softly pulling him away from the man, and after a moment Alaricus gives in, allowing the reddened man to crumple to the floor pitifully. I stand on my tiptoes, wrapping my arms around Alaricus' neck, I hug him to me, keeping him faced away from the man. Alaricus' arms wound tightly around my waist, and he closer into his chest, deeply inhaling as he buries his face into my hair. Go. I mouth to the man as his eyes connect with mine, and he nods thankfully, rushing out of the room. I keep my hold on Alaricus for a few moments longer to ensure Mr. Lockhart gets out all right, and then I unlock my arms from around him. Resting my hands on his chest, I try to push off. But he growls loudly. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Get off of me, Alaricus, I say calmly, but another growl sounds from his chest now. I hiss at him, and he swallows thickly, releasing me from his tight hold, and I take another step back from him, his eyes following my every move, not looking pleased with the distance his mate creates. My eyes tear up at the feral possessive look in his eyes, and a single tear trails down my pale cheek. Alaricus' eyes soften at the sight of it, a soft whimper escaping him, as he reaches out for me, the need to comfort his mate so desperate in his eyes, the sweet bright honey filled with sorrow. Don't, I say, trying to keep my voice from wavering. Angel Eye. He begins, but I don't let him finish. No, I think you're done for today, I say, whirling away from him, to walk back to my room. Amara, please, he starts, his footsteps sounding behind me, but I don't bother to turn around. Leave me alone, Alaricus. Leaving him behind as I walk up to my room, tears trailing down my cheeks.